look, you're allowed to talk about your feelings. Yes, sometimes boys do cry. It's fine. No one says you're meant to be always doing it every day, every hour in public. But no, be aware what your feelings tell you, what comes up. It's fine. And for a lot of boys, that's a particular hurdle. Peer pressure, especially. A lot of that is governed by peer pressure, and no one wants to be embarrassed. No one wants to stand there as the weak one. And I've noticed this when girls are among themselves, that the dynamics is different. I was brought up with two elder sisters. There was always talk. There were always discussions. Whereas us men, we tend not to do this. We go to the pub and get drunk instead and start a fight, you know. And that has to change, absolutely. I also tell my clients, look, if you do fuck up, own up. There might be reasons why you might not have heard properly what you were told, what led to the boundary violation. Yes, you might not have properly been told from your dad this. And I have to tell my clients, be aware though, this is only an explanation. It doesn't justify the boundary violation. You are ultimately accountable. So see to make it good again. Practice. And eventually, when they stay with it, it usually works. I had a client once, he was 19 when I had finished with him. It broke my heart. He said, Hal, thank you for teaching me all this, but why the fuck haven't I learned any of this from my dad or from school? This is something that annoys me as well. Have you guys been aware there isn't a single program on BBC 1, 2, 3 or 4 or ITV or Channel 4, Channel 5 or any of the Sky programs that regularly discusses how relationships are meant to be working, intimacy, consent, how we talk about our feelings, how we draw the boundaries. There isn't an educational program that regularly would fill that educational void we're talking about here, you know.
I was just going to add that I work in a school, in a secondary school.
Yeah.
And like I echo your thought of that in schools there isn't so much a you can make a mistake, it's fine, don't worry.
Yeah.
Even in terms of an education aspect. Whereas like so of course when it hits to other things, there's the fear of not wanting to speak out or the fear of not wanting to say something because you've never been allowed to say something and get it wrong. And in the same way,
Fear of punishment, yeah, doesn't help.
Even in terms of like PSHE of learning, it's often taught by the DT teacher, the random teacher in the school who may not actually be really qualified to understand that what they're imparting is really important.
Yeah. By the way, this is another reason why I think it is a good idea when especially younger boys have maybe a male teacher or a figure because they'll be able to open up a bit more. That's also the context why particularly fathers are important for younger boys. The bond between mothers and daughters tends to be quite closer, as an example, whereas even in studies in the 1980s, where the kids were asked, if you'd have the choice between the television and your father, what would you pick? 90% of the kids would have picked the television. So this is, again, nothing new, you know. And it's, you know, it ultimately would have to be the job of the dad to make sure, no, son, don't worry. You can fuck up as long as you're making it good again. You are allowed to be insecure. You're 12. No one expects that you've figured it all out. It's fine, I'm with you, you know. Otherwise, that inner autonomy never grows, where guys can then properly give themselves to a relationship and be heard and be criticized and don't take it personally and lash out because they feel their masculinity has been injured, you know. So, yeah.
It's more sharing a thought on the back of
Go for it.
So my circumstances were I was raised by my father that the two greatest sins in life were showing emotion or not being perfect at something.
Wow.
So of course, like being an imperfect human being, I went through my life with total insecurity. Now, likewise, at my school was one of those community schools that were all, oh, it's okay to make mistakes, but by then, all the damage was done. Add on top of that, I have always been an extremely emotional, sensitive person.
Good.
And I would show my emotions very, very easily, particularly the insecure ones. So at school, I used to get the crap. Literally, I was beaten up every other day for it. After school, I went into the whole substance abuse thing because needed to escape.
Yeah.
Unfortunately, now through an awful lot of work and effort, I've turned it all around and now realise actually my empathy, which is the new word I use for it,
Good.
is my superpower.
Good. Absolutely.
But what you said earlier about having that space to be vulnerable
Yeah.
is the thing that I was denying
Yeah.
myself the most.
Yeah.
Uh,
Whereas it's actually precisely our vulnerabilities that makes us come across as human beings. I tell my young boys, no woman likes a big macho guy who just pretends to be the big G, you know. It's true, isn't it? It doesn't work for the women, you know.
That's not what they're taught. It's not what young boys are taught. And it's not what they're taught.
Yeah. So,
Just going on with that for a second, there is a discourse between what parents want the children to learn and then what we're able to teach in schools,
yeah.
especially around PSHE. So I work in FE, so it's just after secondary school. And sex education at that point, so from 16, is not compulsory at the moment. Now, I've chosen to do a specific course around sex education for
Yeah.
teenagers, but no one else in the college
Yeah.
does that. Because I recognise, as do like some of my colleagues, how important that is. But even at secondary school, parents are allowed to take their children out of secondary, out of sex education.
Yeah.
But all that conversation around consent and talking about sex
Yeah.
communication, they miss out on.
They miss out. Yeah. It's a problem.
Yeah. I've got 19-year-olds that don't know what penis is.
Yeah.
And that's how scary.
Yeah. I had a 19-year-old male client who didn't know what hymen meant. It's a problem. Yeah. And sorry, I have to be the arrogant German here. There's a slight cultural difference here as well, which interestingly, even Marlene Dietrich at the time noted when she was in the UK and then went to the States. In one of the first interviews, she said this in the 1950s in front of all of the cameras. She said, "You Americans, you are obsessed with sex. In Europe, it's a fact." So, sorry guys, I have to say, I have to terrify several of my clients, leave your English stiff upper lip outside of my therapy space. It doesn't help. And kids should be able to learn to find their own language, to ask the questions, maybe stupid questions as well. No one is going to punish them. It's so important. And I do think this is missing, you know. Yeah, so.
I think that's also to do with that I think a lot of people are terrified that we're sexualising children.
Yeah.
And it's not about sexualisation of children, it's making sure that they've got a voice that they need.
Precisely. It's actually about safety as well, you know. So, I'm unsure why on a governmental level there aren't any. By the way, this law I always thought is indicative as well. Offences against the Person Act. You do know this. For us Kingsters, this is key. Anything that isn't transient or trifling, anything that leaves a mark for long term, is a legal grey area. Why? Because the law goes back from 1861. And if you ask me, I would say this is by design. Another reason why the licensing laws in this country, I'm not much of a patriot, but when it comes to beer drinking, I'm a bit of a German. And a city where the pub shut at 11, like an idiot, I'm still annoyed about this 30 years in. But I do believe on a sort of, in Turkish we have a saying that means a fish stinks from its head. So it's possibly a control mechanism that particular laws aren't updated, that particular laws aren't even implemented that would safeguard us kids. It's a big void, yeah. So another reason, as you guys know, hence why we do workshops. You know, we try to do our bit in the kink community. There's always someone who has his field if you've got any bondage questions, David is your guy, you know. There's always someone who's really good and happy to share and talk things through. So hence why this is so important, you know.
How important is your emotional connection to the person or the persons that you're treating? I mean, as in, can I make sense? I mean, do you have to be, kind of, how emotionally involved? I guess it's probably, it depends on the individual, but how important it is to be emotionally connected to the person that you're playing with?
It's, yeah, how important it is to be emotionally connected to the person you're playing with.
Do you have to have a strong emotional connection to play successfully?
Good question. There might be variations because a lot of things we're into, we might not need that strong of an emotional bond. Depends what it is.
So you want to have to do your best for them, as in provide. I can quite easily provide a good experience for someone and want to do my best for them. That doesn't mean I'm hugely emotionally involved.
No. Sometimes we just might want a one-night stand. You guys decide how much emotions you want to invest. What I would recommend for more advanced kink play, I would recommend a big level of trust. I would say that is crucial here. So there are some play I wouldn't recommend you guys instantly start off with. Hence, by the way, please don't follow trends. Just because everyone is doing bondage doesn't mean you're going to like it to start small. For certain things, for particular physical aspects, give yourselves the time, and I would recommend an emotional bond together with a level of trust that is important, yeah. Plus, there's one other advantage when you really have got a good thing going between two people. It eases the communication. You just get each other. Have you noticed this? When you don't like someone, you tend to misunderstand that person more as well, or you just go blank. So that's the other advantage, actually, yeah. For certain plays, yeah, see that there's an emotional bond, see that you trust the person, and talk first. Talk first. This is the reason why I showed you the anatomical drawing. We set our boundaries by establishing exactly what we wanted or what gets us going and what's it like with the other person. And during the process, during the talk, you're going to know if the other person is listening properly, if there's at all any empathy, if there's at all any genuine interest. And even if you just have got a slight bit of doubt, which you're going to feel from your gut feeling, go with that and take yourself the time or just try someone else. So safety is really first. So yes, an emotional bond is important. So, no.
I would just
Yeah.
build on that, and going back to what you asked me earlier about how to avoid maybe attraction or whatever, is when you're first engaging with people, wipe the slate clean. There's no switches, there's no
Yep.
DOMs, there's no stuff.
Yeah,
I'm a person, you're a person, and let's just
yeah,
communicate and build it from there. And if the person is overwhelming in, no, I don't want to talk to you like a human being, I want to talk to you like a sub or a dom or whatever, that in itself is a bit of a flag. If they can't start from a neutral, just a human interaction, that's a flag.
yeah.
If you can't get that, walk away.
Yeah, yeah, I agree. Yeah, I agree.
So thanks, have a nice day.
Yeah.
Move on. If you can't just relate, and it's all about relation, right?
It is.
Relating.
It is.
Communication brings relating.
It is.
To the start.
Yeah. Yeah.
To kind of turn that question on its head a little bit as well. Most of my relationships have been long-term relationships. They've been non-good to start with, and that's kind of grown into the relationship as we've grown together. That's a very easy way of doing it. That trust is established very early on. I have had some casual kink relationships, and in those, we tend to be, I sort of let myself be guided by my partner in terms of what they thought, what their boundaries were. They would ask and trust that they would tell me what they were. Talking about how how ubiquitous pornography is and sort of very extreme
Yeah.
sex acts, and how that kind of window is shifted and people are expected, or some men expect that that's what sex is going to be like, and then perhaps some partners think that that's what they should be doing. How would you recommend kind of establishing that somebody is setting the boundaries where they actually are, rather than where they think their boundaries should be?
Where they think the boundaries should be.
Yeah.
Who does the stipulating?
I mean, certainly in the casual relationships I've been in, it's them. I wouldn't do anything
Yeah.
that they didn't specifically say was okay or ask for.
Yeah.
But how would you ensure that they're saying that they're okay with something, or they're asking for something because they genuinely want it for?
To be honest, there's only one way to really ensure where the boundaries are set are actually really there. Regularly check. Start small. Especially at the beginning. You're right, the proof is really in eating the pudding. Cheap pun, but it does apply here. You're going to find during the play if the boundaries are actually there. Another reason why we always suggest start small and regularly check. Does this work for you? Are we in green? And the more you regularly check, the more actually the confidence grows with the experience. Hence why we emphasize practice, regularly play, and be aware what's going on in your bodies, how it feels like. Do you feel safe? Is it horny? Is it fun? Or is it a bit, no. And as soon as you feel this, red, and take a break. The more you repeat this, eventually you're going to be fairly aware where the boundaries are. So, and discuss it, talk it through, especially after a session. How was this for you? Did it work? What worked? What didn't? Check.
And when you fuck up, verbally you will, because you're
Yeah.
a human being, own it.
Yeah.
Learn from it.
Yeah.
And move on.
Yeah. True. Yeah. Ironically, you do know this is one of the other ways to find out a boundary when it's been overstepped.
Yeah.
Sadly, we're all going to fuck up, you know. And it's actually not so much about the fuck up, it's what we learn from this, how we can make it good again, how we can take a bit more, how we can pay more attention for the next time. It is a learning process, seriously. So, and be present in the moment now. Don't be so much up in your minds here. It's important not to idealize how sex should be like, how the session should be like. It helps as well when the attention is in the here and now. It's ironically in my therapy work as well. Us guys especially, we tend to be here much more wanting to fix things and resolve things. It's a good idea. It's a really good idea to be present in the moment where you can catch the emotional cues, where you really pay attention and you see it. You can read the body language as well, what works and what doesn't. Any doubts, you check.
I like your view as someone who works within the mental health sphere on areas of kink that are degrading and the effects that might have on the sub's own mental health and self-image. Even if it's if it's sort of pre-agreed, but is there a danger of degrading acts or statements having a negative impact on that person's mental health?
I know what you mean. The degrading in play can happen when someone doesn't look after him or herself that much. This is part why we always go on about accountability. You have to look after yourselves. And if there is something that doesn't quite work, or if there is something maybe in your life that really is another stress factor, that might be a massive distractor, see to resolve that. Yeah, you have to look after yourself. And this is how we draw the boundaries accordingly as well. We know what's good for us. We know what we like. And when we are really so distracted with other things, or when we're going through our period of depression, as an example, when we're emotionally quite not there, it could be another factor. Or when we are simply too anxious, and when we're terrified and can't maybe say stop. Yeah. We have to practice constantly self-care. Again, the constant, you see our bonds, our relationships, it's a continuation of what we ultimately got from our parents, the constant process of love and nurture. It doesn't end when we're teenagers and when we're adults. This is important. So the other partner would also have the responsibility, hey, you've been feeling down a bit lately. Is everything okay? Just for that not to happen. I hope this answers the question.
To an extent, if I can expand a little bit. So as a dom, I've been in a situation where somebody's asked me to call them worthless, for example. So for me, that's kind of a soft limit. I'm curious about it, but I wouldn't want to do anything that would affect their mental health negatively. So I'm sort of trying to understand the effects that calling someone worthless in a play session.
Yeah.
I mean, could that potentially be damaging, or is that?
You see, the fact that it's interesting, the fact that you're thinking about this already, that you have got doubts already, I would discuss this. There might be reasons for this, yeah.
Oh yeah, and that's why for me it's a soft limit, is because
Cool.
I wouldn't be comfortable with it, but I've always been curious about it, like intellectually curious as to...
Take care, this isn't an intellectual exercise.
No.
But what you meant is, what word was it you used, degradation?
Degradation.
It can happen when someone doesn't quite look after himself that much and loses a bit of sense of self. Yeah. And that's hence why I emphasize the regular communication, the regular chats, where we check in regularly with our partners for that not to happen. But the fact that you've got doubts already that this could possibly be the case, share it. Check with your partner. So, yeah.
So I sort of have a by osmosis mental health background. My mother, my sister, more than one partner have been mental health nurses, mainly working with adolescents and young adults. And they use when discussing with them about confidentiality, some of their work, they use the phrase self-destructive sexual behaviour.
Self-destructive?
Self-destructive sexual behaviour.
Yeah.
Sort of one of the risk factors for the individuals they're working with, usually in conjunction with something else like drug abuse or eating disorders or something like that. But when discussing kind of what that meant in real terms, as you were saying, it sounds very similar to these, like the physical acts sound very similar to things that are sort of fetishizing within the kink community and are perfectly healthy. But how do you make that distinction?
You personally might not be able to make that distinction. One of what you described could be someone who's traumatized, that usually has a pattern, that kind of behavior.
And maybe presenting as that, full consent.
Yeah.
But is it in their best interest to consent?
This goes hand in hand actually with what you've just pointed out. We're going to have partners who go through life issues, difficulties, and they might have, and it might have history. A lot of us, we've got abused childhoods or so. This is what I meant with self-care. That needs to be resolved. One of the stress responses, fight, flight, and then there's freeze. When someone is frozen because of the...
That's an F you didn't mention before, so that's 6, yeah?
Those were evolutionary drives. And actually stress responses, there's fight, flight, freeze, fuck, friend, foe, fawn. Fawn.
Oh, okay.
F-A-W-N.
But that'd be freeze. No.
Those are all stress responses. Those are all stress responses. And especially the freeze is crucial here when trauma is unresolved. Because when someone is frozen because of the stress that has never been resolved properly, for many people you could nearly say it's an emotional arrested development they're in. So they never properly got to the emotional maturity which is required for us being responsible sexual adults. So this might be one of the reasons why you might come across people who can't quite do it because they're still carrying around that childhood unresolved trauma and the pain with it that can be so paralyzing. So if you've got any doubts, I would share, look, this is how it feels like when I'm with you many a times and I'm concerned. Have you discussed this with a therapist? Have you discussed this with someone? This is what I ultimately mean as well with self-care. And one of the most important boundaries that should never be crossed in any relationship. You know, if you notice that your partner really has had a traumatizing childhood, you cannot resolve the trauma for your partner. You can only empathize and assist in the process of, look, I'm here for you. You can always have my shoulder to cry on, but I cannot resolve your trauma for you. This is something you need to do with your therapist, and the relationship you'll hopefully be able to build up with him or her. But this is something that doesn't belong in our relationship. By the way, this is another reason why we keep on going on about accountabilities and our area of accountability. This is a really good example. So as an example, trigger points to answer your question how you could know if you aren't quite sure. Look out for trigger points. If there's suddenly a moment when your partner is disproportionately emotional, suddenly breaks out in tears or drops into a rage, it could be that you might have touched on something that has history. And if that has history that precedes your relationship, there isn't that much you can do here other than empathize and support your partner. Look, you might like to look this into so that it is properly resolved. So just in terms of self-care, this could, and if someone doesn't do this, a lot of people, they really hate themselves and have this self-loathing, and I would never play along as a dom to participate in this. This would not be sane, this would not be healthy, and it would be irresponsible. Just to give you another example of a clear boundary here. So another reason why I always ask is, especially my male clients, to pay attention what's happening emotionally, so those things are actually much more clear and obvious.
Question. So I feel like we often talk about boundaries, like there are these really clear things I can write down 1 to 10 on a piece of paper. And obviously some of them definitely are.
Yeah.
And there might be things that before a session I could go in, write down 1 to 10, this, that and the other. But I feel like that implies a very clear sense of like single self that has very singular boundaries. Whereas you might find that like you have some of that and then other boundaries that are more like more kind of more vague, more confusing, like, you know, I know I don't want this, that and the other, and I also think I should be asleep before 11. Because otherwise it really is going to affect my tomorrow, that kind of stuff, the kind of vaguer things where, you know, sometimes that doesn't matter, and then sometimes that really does matter, because fucking it my tomorrow is really bad, and then sometimes you know things beforehand, and sometimes you know things in the moment, like, oh, I really thought I didn't want to and in this moment, I feel so comfortable, wow. And those moments when boundary shifts can sometimes be really, really like powerful, because you suddenly realise you want something you didn't know you wanted. But, and I understand that obviously the golden rules, checking in every time, always, like as much as you can. But is there any work you can do with yourself or with a partner, either beforehand or as a practice that isn't just like checking in, like, hey, to help negotiate more vague boundaries or turn vague boundaries into more clear boundaries? If you've got like a kind of bracket of boundaries, it could be somewhere between here and there, how to talk about that with the partner beforehand, because if you say to someone, well, I might be up for anything between here and there, but I'm not quite sure where it's going to land at the time. Any vocabulary for that, any help?
Put the cards on the table, say, look, this bit here, I'm not so sure about. Let's put this on the maybe pile. I'll keep you posted. I'll let you know in the moment.
Yeah.
As an example.
Is that not a massive like red flag to
If it is a massive red flag for the other,
not red flag, is that not a massive like, I don't know, maybe sometimes it's difficult communicating what your maybe stuff is, because you wouldn't want to say maybe this and then like, do you lose control about, like, I guess I shouldn't, I don't know, I think discussing babies can be difficult. And I don't mean the losing control bit, because that doesn't sound right.
Yeah. I mean, the fact that it is a maybe, let the person know, look, this is a maybe. I'm actually not really sure about this, but I'll let you know as soon as I am sure. And I'm going to let you know by, and then you can, you know, I'm going to shout red if I'm sure that this isn't what I like, or I'm going to keep you posted. You know, the traffic light symbol, the traffic light system. A lot of people use this in the play where they repeatedly say yes, green, green, keep going, amber, amber, amber. Should it be that a space of insecurity or uncertainty? How you find the language? Check what would work for your partner. Another reason why sort of an emotional bond is so important, you're going to likely have your own language already. See to agree on key vocabularies, maybe the traffic light system or maybe other colors or so, numbers. A lot of people use a scale from 1 to 10. You know, if you're unsure, tell your client, okay, we're at 5, keep going, but don't rush. 5, 4, go slower. Just to gauge your emotional area. So, and listen to your body as well. It's usually another reason why I emphasize try not to be so much up here. Your body will tell you if it feels good or not, or if you're starting to tense up. But yes, as I said, there's always going to be a scope of, there's always going to be a bit of a grey area. And in terms of damage limitation, go slow and regularly check on each other. Until you're sick and tired of it, most likely, and then take a break. But better safe than sorry. And by the way, the uncertainties you're going to find mainly in the beginning. The more you guys experiment seriously, confidence levels usually grow. Practice makes kind of perfect-ish.
Thanks. It's all really helpful tips for having discussions about maybes, which is like I think feels like a very important part of boundary setting where things aren't.
And you know, it's fine. You're allowed to have maybes. You're allowed to be unsure. You're allowed to. That's the whole point. You're allowed to experiment.
Something I've done in the past.
Yeah.
A bit of OTT, neurodivergent sexuality, is actually have a spreadsheet listing out all kinds of kinks. All kinds, everything. I mean, I've garnered the list from all over the place. And I've gone through with partners and gone, okay, hard limit, not hard limit, something you love, something you live for, something you've heard about, and just actually have gone through and gone, yes, no, maybe. And I don't even know what the hell is that, what is it? And then it starts a discussion, and it's always evolving, and you come back to it, and this is done, you know, at a coffee shop or at home over a cup of coffee. It's not a plaything. You're not doing it at that time. You're just discussing it and you're running through and you go, okay, well, if it arises during a session, now I know if that's red or it's a green or it's a maybe. And if it's a maybe, that's when you go, okay, little baby steps, just give it a try, check in. And it's just something that's one way of doing it. Part of this transparency, part of this communicating, part of this relating. And some people, you can do that with, and some people don't want to do it, but that's one way of doing things. Yeah. That way you've got everything on the table beforehand. It's a little bit like relationship management, where you're saying what parts of a relationship you want to have. It's just not a list of all the different things. Some things like, what do you think, sir?
I've also got the fat life interest.
Yeah, I feel like I feel like fetishes, like there's like a million of the damn things. Colony, which became Collar Space, used to have quite a good set of lists on it, and that's got a good thing. You can go, they do it where they go everything from live for to, you know, accidentally hate it, which is a good way of sort of gauging something you're really interested in doing, mildly interested, absolutely not. And you just sort of wear from there.
By the way, By the way, there are also online forums in a lot of kink communities. They're like contracts or so, where you get it a bit like a menu, and you can go through what you guys would fancy to try, what you are definitely into, and what you definitely don't want to try, and maybe the things in the middle.
Can I suggest as well, once you've got, so what I found was fantastically for me, is once having the sex menu, anything new to try, whether that's pushing us off limits or just something new, rehearse it out of a session, like just walk it through step by step.
Yeah.
What would happen? Practice it a couple of times before introducing it in a session, and then for a session to agree beforehand, these are the things that are going to be in the session, these are the things that are not going to be in the session, so that everybody knows exactly what to expect.
Yeah.
There's no surprises, because being surprised with something you're a maybe about, that could be a very stressful situation, I would imagine. So, yeah, rehearsal and agree in advance of the session.
Yeah.
And also try to find it important watch and see whether, instead of good, just see whether watching it makes you feel the way you
Yeah.
fancy that, or no, actually, that doesn't do anything for me.
Absolutely.
The other thing to think about is also discuss aftercare and what to do if something goes wrong. Be prepared for when something goes wrong. It's like if you're in bondage, make sure you've got the right shears for cutting the rope.
Absolutely.
Don't have it as an afterthought because you don't have time for it to be an afterthought.
Let me elaborate on this. We have a terminology for this. It's called doing a pre-mortem. Have you guys heard of the terminology before? You guys know what a post-mortem is, when the body is already on the slab. In that case, it's too late. A pre-mortem is to do everything, to put everything in place so that both of you, or however many partners are involved, know what you're meant to be doing for damage limitation. So, should I suddenly have a panic attack, these are the things that usually bring me down again. It's a good idea to know first aid. You're likely going to need it if someone faints or so. Just certain things to bring oneself down again. You know, do I need a cuddle afterwards? Do you want me to put a blanket over your shoulders after that or so? Or anything else? You guys know you'll be safe and to bring yourselves down again. So. Nice one. We've got a few more minutes. My energy levels are coming down. my sessions usually last 50 minutes. So, any more questions, folks? Cool. Nice one. If you like, we can wrap it up. If you've got any more questions, or you can grab me afterwards or so. Thanks so much, guys. Appreciate it. Thank you.